Hello friends and welcome back. So today we are leaving the forge behind because I wanted to show off a more realistic approach to doing entry-level knife making and blacksmithing and, knife or sharp object crafting, because I understand that not everyone is some idiot Australian who just pulls a forge and an anvil and a whole assortment of hammers out of his shed. So what I've got here, and even this is a little bit of overkill, but what this is here, this is my belt linisher which I got from a machine shop maybe a couple of years ago, and I can imagine that even this is not something that a lot of people would have at their disposal, but what you can find are cheaper belt linishers at your Bunnings or hardware store. So what I'm going to be showing you today is just grinding a knife out of bar steel. So bar steel you can get at any of your metal suppliers. I get this one from an artisan supply store in my area. Obviously you'd be using a different one, and this is just 1075 steel, I think. I got this bar, would have been years and years and years ago, and you can probably see it's accumulated a lot of rust on the surface. It would have at one point had texture written on it for what sort of steel it is. The other steel I have in the shed is 15N20, which probably isn't as good for creating a sharp knife edge. It's good for Damascus steel welding, but not for making a blade on its own. So I'm hoping that this is 1075. And what I have next to me here, this is my belt linisher, which I picked up a couple of years ago from a machine shop, and this is drastic overkill. If you wanted to just get into grinding out some blades in your spare time, I'd recommend you could start on something a lot smaller than this. You can typically pick up a smaller model for maybe $200 to $300, which does sound like a lot, but if you were doing any metalworking or even woodworking, you can still use it in woodworking projects. They are a good investment. And you can even get ones that have a disc sander attachment as well, so they're a combination disc and belt linisher. Those are fantastic. So if you picked up one of those, you basically have everything you need to start making blades, whether it's knife blades, craft blades, or carving blades, which I'm going to be doing today. So what I want to do is I want to grab some of this steel, cut off a little bit, and since it is so thick, I can even cut down the center and make two blades out of whatever portion I cut off. And then what I will be doing is hardening the blade. That is the one part that you probably would need a heat source for. However, since the blade is going to be so small, I myself am going to be using my furnace to heat up the blade, but if you didn't have access to a furnace, an oxyacetylene torch, some blowtorch, even those ones that you get for cooking could be worth using. But if none of those options sound good to you, there are fantastic tutorials online for how to build a furnace really cheap, just using charcoal and some sort of an air blower. Even if you have to salvage an old blower vac, that can be a good option as well. So with a little bit of charcoal, you should be able to generate enough heat to heat up these small blades and then just quench them in oil. You don't even have to use a proper knife-making oil. I've heard that canola oil can be a fantastic substitute, and that's probably what I'm going to be using today. So with that being said, let's get started. Unfortunately, I've skipped ahead a little bit here, but all that you've missed is me cutting off a length of my bar steel with an angle grinder and then slicing down the middle. If you don't have an angle grinder, you can get the same effect with a hacksaw, but I would not recommend it. So if you can either borrow an angle grinder, get a cheap one, whatever you have to do to not do this by hand, best option available to you. And now all I'm doing is using a lead pencil to just trace on my design. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make one straight blade, or fairly straight blade, and one curved blade, kind of like a talon or a velociraptor claw. This is going to be an absolute menace to sharpen, but I do love biting off more than I can chew, so let's see if we can actually make it work. So here's one of my smaller bars. I've got the design traced onto it, and I'm going to use this to grind it down. I'm going to start with a very aggressive sandpaper first, so I'm going to start around 40 grit or thereabouts. That's going to just get rid of most of the material, and then when I start putting the edges on, then I can change to a less aggressive belt, and that'll give me better control over how much material I remove. Ooh, that sun has gone away. I apologize for the lighting. It's going to be changing a lot. I'm in full sun at the moment. I can't really do this inside the shed. It's going to be a mess. I'm so sorry about that. So I'm going to get into my safety equipment and start grinding out these blades from these bars. So the wind's picking up, I hope you can still hear me. Now that I've got both of my blades carved out, I've got this one which is going to be my hooked beak, my raptor claw, my And then this one, the straight edge, would just be good for carving down flat surfaces, and then it's got that really fine tip that's going to get into nice little crevices if I need it to. With the blades done, now I just need to put them into handles. I'm going to be using this Merbau leftovers. I think it was from when we were doing a set of stairs or something or other. So this is going to be the handle of these blades, or not this one piece. I'm going to have to find another one for the second blade. But I think what I can do is I can just drill a hole down through the center of it, which I can then insert this blade into, and I'm going to do the same thing I did with the Damascus sword, which is just heating up the tang and then searing it into the timber. So I'll drill a hole to start with, get rid of most of the material, and then when this one is hot, I can burn away the excess. It should then be a very snug fit, and I can come along with some epoxy resin to really get that set in place. And I might even rough up some of the surface of the tang just to make sure it is held in there nice and tight-like. So for drilling out this handle, I'm going to be using my pedestal drill. You can get the same effect using a hand drill, but you're just going to have to be a little bit careful. The advantage of having the pedestal drill is I can go straight up and down, and I know it's going to be a straight hole. If you have to use a hand drill, just take your time, get it all lined up. The one thing I would definitely recommend doing is going down to your hardware store and getting a long drill bit. Do not try and do this with a drill bit that is too short, and the long drill bits aren't too expensive. I think you could probably pick one up between the $10 and $20 range, and you only need one size, and then that can drill all of your pilot holes for all of your handles. So now I've got two of my handles basically completely to shape. I'm just going to give them a bit of a hand sand to get rid of the burnt parts on it, because then I can lacquer it up and it's going to look lovely. So now, the blades. I've shortened the tangs a little bit because the holes weren't quite right. Also, they're rattling around a little bit, which means the holes have been, unfortunately, overburnt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get two pieces of 15N20 steel, about the dimensions of this end bit here, and I'm going to have a little bit of a bolster that I'm going to put in. So what I'll have to do is I'll drill those out so the tank slides in, and then I'm going to make it a really nice firm fit, because that's going to help hold it all in place. This is almost at a state of completion. All I need to do, bolsters on both, heat treat both blades, stick them in, stick them down tight with epoxy resin. All of that sounds pretty easy to do in an afternoon. Am I right? I'm lying. That's a lot to do. I better get cracking. And with the final coat of oil on the handles, I've been left with these little beauties. These are probably the best blades that I've made so far. It's a shame that they're so itty bitty. But that's fine, because for this video, I really just wanted to highlight the fact that you can get away with just grinding out a shape if you have access to any sort of grinder at all, whether it be an angle grinder, a belt grinder, or just, you could technically do it with a file and sandpaper. I would not recommend that. That is far too much work for anyone. If you can get some electrical help, do so. But with these ones, I've now been left with these teeny tiny knives that I can use for whittling, carving. Honestly, truth be told, I've been using it as a letter opener lately. But to talk about these blades, so with this one, obviously, I've got the darkened steel going on. How I did that is, well, I just didn't polish it. After the heat treating process, I basically just ground down the edge and left the back spine of the blade, except for along this back edge. I wanted that to be polished as well. Oh, another note that I've made, there's no bolster on this one. There's no shiny silver bit like on this blade. The reason why is I was going to make 2 bolsters and my drill bit kind of pooped itself when it was drilling into this one. This is just 15N20 steel and I love the way that it looks. It's really shined up nice and polished very well. So I think for all of my future bolsters, I'd be happy to make it out of 15N20. It looks gorgeous. But yeah, my drill bit kind of gave out and I was not able to drill a hole in the second bolster to get my file into to file it away. So I kind of had to put that one on hold. So how I've attached these is I've just put some epoxy resin into the handles and inserted them. This one looks a lot more finished and a lot better just having that bolster. Because the Talon blade, you look down the end of it where it's attached to the handle and it looks very shoddily done. You can tell that it's an amateur project, but the one with the bolster on it, it looks very professional, but if you took that bolster away, the end of it would look exactly the same as the Talon blade. So the bolster is a good way of hiding a great many sins. I'm all for that. So that is how, with just a little bit of time, just a grinder, or at worst, a file, you can take some flat bar steel. Hopefully it's a high quality, high carbon steel that you can heat treat, but you can turn that with a little bit of timber into 2 beautiful carving knives that would be a fine addition to any workshop. But that's all there is to it today. I'm hoping that I can use these carving knives in a project that I've got brewing up, so keep an eye out for that in the coming week. I hope it all comes together, but if it does, you will get to see these little carving knives in action, and we can test out how well they really perform. As the first functional knives that I've managed to create, I'll be interested to see how well I did. But until then, take care, and I will see you in the next video. Oh, and if you haven't subscribed yet, you totally should. I mean, a little bit of self-promotion there. And please leave a like if you've enjoyed even a second of this video. It would mean a lot. So thank you, and see you all next time. Bye! I mean, if nothing else, I can retire it as a potato peeler. Seems to be working well.